I got to ask you, what's the lesson of this, right? Because soon the finals will be over and it's going to get real around here. Daryl will have to, he'll have Tyrese and Joel, and it's like, all right, how do we fill this roster? So what's the lesson of the Mavericks?
To build the best possible team around your 2 stars, 3 through 7. And if you want to extend it to 8, 3 through 8. I think that's the lesson, because when you go from Tatum and Brown, let's start with Boston, Drew Holiday, Derek White, Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis, right? That's 4 guys right there that we look at and we say, okay, those guys can play. Peyton Pritchard, a young player that is now playing in this rotation in the postseason, giving you really good minutes, hitting some shots. Sam Hauser also maybe knocking down some shots here from time to time in a big spot for this basketball team. Then you go to Dallas, and we just laid out all of their players that have given them good minutes, have given them good production on the floor in their roles that they have accepted. And that's the other key. You have to accept your role coming in here, knowing that you're going to be playing behind Embiid and Maxey. So if it's Paul George, as good as Paul George is, still is an all NBA level player, an all-star at least this past season. Yes, he's going to come in here and he's going to get a big contract should they sign him and he agrees to come to Philadelphia. But we know it's Embiid's team. There's a role there between Maxey and George to see who can do it. Guess what? You can have one night, I'll have it the other night. We can take turns in this and have that work out. But then it's what happens 4 through 7, as we just laid out, from Jones Jr. to Gafford, Lively, PJ Washington, getting Dante Exum minutes, Josh Green playing some decent minutes for the Dallas Mavericks. So it's for Daryl Morey and the Sixers is 3 through 7 or 8, and those role players coming in fitting Embiid and Maxey going forward and knowing who they are in this whole thing here in Philadelphia.
So it's interesting because I was talking to somebody about the Paul George situation, and they go, here's a guy that you really would worry about, come playoff time. It's the same thing. Like you almost, it's the Jimmy and Paul George are so interesting, right? Because Jimmy's your money guy, but what happens during the regular season? Like, can you count on him to play? How many games you're going to play? You already got to deal with that with Joe, right? You don't know how many games Joe's going to play. So the regular season becomes a bit of a conundrum, and then you're just all in on the playoffs. Paul George, you don't know about those moments in the playoffs that he's going to have to step up with Joel and Tyrese. So like both of them are kind of like on the flip side, and they come with their own worries.
And not just those two. When you look at the rest of the names that we've discussed, from Brandon Ingram to so many other ones that we've discussed, even OG Anunoby when we talked about him, there are issues with everyone, whether it's the age and injury with Jimmy Butler and Paul George. It's the questions of focus with Brandon Ingram. Can he fit with his stylistic play with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey? OG Anunoby with the health concerns, even though the two-way ability is phenomenal because his defense is so exceptional. On and on and on. There seems to be, the idea of them is perfect, but then there are these warts with everyone. And when you speak about Paul George and you and who you've spoken with, you're absolutely right, because we know that the jokes about the playoff peace stuff when he was in Indiana, he's had some really good moments in Indiana when there was really no pressure because they were trying to get past LeBron James and the Miami Heat and the Cleveland Cavaliers, right?
Yeah.
Then you go to when he gets to OKC, he did have a phenomenal playoff run where he was an MVP candidate that season, teaming up with Russell Westbrook. He goes to Los Angeles, and we know the big to-do about he and Doc Rivers and Kawhi Leonard and all of that, and that didn't work out. He did have, and you mentioned the Bucks run, and I've talked about this on the show when, Phoenix at the time, that 2021 Western Conference Finals, I was out there for a game, and it was game 5, I know it was, because they lost, and he and Reggie Jackson are destroying the Suns. And I'm like, why won't these guys just go away? Well, it was because of Paul George. Kawhi Leonard wasn't playing. It was because of Paul George, Reggie Jackson elevating his game. But Paul George was that good in the postseason. But more times than not, it's been a failure. And that's a big part of it. You know that the Sixers, without Paul George, as long as Embiid and Maxey are teaming up and they have the right supporting cast around them, 50 games is locked in. That's the standard for this team now at this point. Second round before this year was a standard for this basketball team. You're not looking for that third guy to make sure that they elevate past that. And is he the one that's going to do that? And the questions are fair because of his past history in the postseason. So if and when he does sign here, if that is the case, or whomever does sign here, can they help Embiid and Maxey get past that part, and then of course to the NBA Finals, because we're all used to what we are accustomed to, which is the 50 and then the second round. It's now time for them to get past that. Can he do that if he is to join this team?
Well, it's funny. It's why, and again, I don't know what his status is, and it's Danny Ainge, so you always have to be careful. But it's why I would love to trade for Marketing. I just think Marketing is the perfect fit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and no one's going to disagree with you, but the cost is going to be heavy, and Danny Ainge is going to hold your feet to the fire because he can.
Okay,
right?
so what? So let's go for it. How many picks? 4?
He's gonna first he's gonna ask for 5.
Right. And I'm not going
What
to give
you're
him
gonna
5.
probably
4.
and then he's gonna hang up the phone, and you say 4. Let's have a conversation, but it's probably still going to be too. It might still be too rich if giving up that 4 because he is on such a good contract. Because he is going to be in demand not only with you but others. If they get wind of the fact that you're talking, then somebody else is. And guess what? That 4 that you talk about is going to bump right back up to 5 because there may be that team that's willing to do it. Where maybe Daryl Morey may not
Would
be.
you do it?
Would I do it? I would do 4, 5. No, 5. No.
At what point do you go, you know what? I have to win. And he's going to give me the best. And by the way, I got him. He's still relatively young. So
Sure.
it's not like, it's a player that I'm going to get and I'm going to be good because I have Maxey and I have him.
Mm-hmm. And the 4, the reason I say 4 or 5, right? We all say that's a perfect fit because there's always that possibility, Ant, that he could always go back to that Chicago, Cleveland, Lowry marketing.
Yeah.
If does he have that out of his system? Is he now this where he's going to be a perennial all-star? He's always going to be in the conversation of being an all NBA player. He's playing on a team that is not geared to win right now. Can he come here and be that player, to your point, help them win and do so by not reverting back to that player that got him traded to Utah and on his third team in the first place?
All right, last thing. Is there a player or two role players that you're looking at that you got circled that you think would be perfect here?
Yeah, this is fun because now you can direct people back to our one of our old episodes where we talked about just this, which is one was DeAndre Hunter for me, another local
Yeah.
kid, plays for the Atlanta Hawks. He signed a 4-year, $80+ million contract. Year 1 is in the books, I believe. So now he's on the second year. So contract is decent. 6'8", average about 16 point shot, over 35% from 3. Just needs to get out of that toxic situation that Atlanta is in. And I think that's the case for maybe a few players there. So he's one that I've looked at that we've talked about on the show. And as far as another one, right off the top of my head, as I'm trying to just go back and think again about some of the names that we did speak of that are role players that you can just bring in, not just trades, but free
Well, Hunter's
agency.
interesting. I like him. And I liked him
I
in
do
the
too.
leg. He scored a ball a little bit. He would be a good rotational guy.
Yeah, versatile defender at that 6'8" size. He can move, he can defend. And again, man, you don't know how that stuff. We've seen it plenty of times where guys just get out PJ Washington out of a bad situation
Yeah.
and maybe getting into a much better opportunity where they just thrive in that role. I don't know about playing at home. I don't know if he has the desire to do that and how he would handle that. I have no clue. But if we're just talking as you ask, that player, I would like that player as a role player, maybe buy low, to your point of
Yeah.
coming in and still being able to help out. Um, as far as another player that I would maybe like as a role guy, um, I've I also threw another one just for fun, and Anthony Simons out in Portland.
Portland.
I
Yeah.
like him. Small, so the backcourt again would still be small with Maxi and as we discussed it, maybe he's in a better role being a six-man, a super six-man. But he's a player that I know that can fill it up. And he signed a 4-year, $100 million deal a couple of years ago. Portland is still not going anywhere. And they have, again, good draft picks. They have Scoot Henderson that they're maybe trying to build around. And if that's the case, do they move Simons? Do they move on from Simons if they're unable to unload Jeremy Grant if he wants out? So Simons was another one that I did bring up. Smaller guy. I understand the backcourt situations with the scoring ability. If you put him in that six-man role, yes, the price tag would be high, but a guy that I would be willing to say, yeah, come off the bench and just fire it up, kid.
We all silly like the mayor.